Hey, it's Mark. Let's go. Go. Close the door. Pencils down. Close the books. Why? Because I'm a history teacher, and I'm going rogue. So, one of the great historical questions is, what causes revolutions? Why do the masses rise up and seize power from a sitting government? You ever notice how many revolutions are caused by women? No. Hear the historical evidence. Go all the way back to the Iliad. Hector wants a wife. None of the women in Troy are good enough for him, so he kidnaps Helen from Argos. Next thing you know, Brad Pitt shows up with a burr up his behind. French Revolution? Louis XVI marries Marie Antoinette. Not French. She's Austrian. Let them eat cake. Yeah, that's something an Austrian would say. And then Nicholas II becomes Tsar of Russia in 1894. He marries a German princess named Alexandra. And so the revolution begins. Nicholas and Alexandra have 4 children, 3 girls, and the youngest was a boy named Alexei. Alexei had hemophilia, meaning that when he got a cut, his blood wouldn't clot, and that's bad. Enter Rasputin, a Russian Orthodox monk. Grigori Rasputin was born to a peasant family in a small village in Siberia. He had a spiritual awakening at the age of 23 after visiting a monastery. He never took the holy orders, but he soon rose to prominence as a mystical religious figure. Dressed in unwashed robes and known for picking food out of his beard in between meals, Rasputin had what some called a hypnotic personality. Others said that he wielded some kind of dark, sinister magic. Now, whatever it was, the hygienically challenged Grigori Rasputin started making his way up the social ladder in Russia's capital, St. Petersburg. Rasputin managed to charm some of the extended family of the Romanovs, then used those connections to be introduced to Nicholas and Alexandra. Here he began a relationship with the Romanovs that would help bring down the Russian Empire. When doctors discovered that Alexei was a severe hemophiliac, the Russian people, already hostile to their German-born Tsarina, blamed the Tsarina for the boy's afflictions. This caused the Tsarina considerable mental and emotional distress for the rest of her life. When doctors couldn't cure her son's condition or even alleviate his symptoms, the Tsarina prayed for healing. Enter Rasputin. Rasputin then stepped forward and said that he could treat the child's symptoms. He could not cure Alexei of his hemophilia, but he could moderate the boy's symptoms. That made him indispensable to the Romanovs, and he knew it. And he exploited his position to gain greater control over them. The Tsar appointed Rasputin his lampadnik, or lamplighter, who was charged with keeping the lamps that burned in front of the religious icons in the palace lit, and thus had regular access to the palace and the royal family. Rasputin used his status and power to full effect, accepting bribes and sexual favors from admirers and working diligently to expand his influence. He soon became a controversial figure, accused by his enemies of religious heresy and rape, and suspected of exerting undue political influence over the Tsar. Soon, Rasputin was being consulted by the Romanovs on matters of state, and they followed his advice if it was religious instruction. This usually ended badly, but the Romanovs continued in their fascination. The Roman people, though, were very leery of the mad monk, and soon pinned every calamity on Rasputin's scheming. Soon, rumors were swirling that Rasputin was the Tsarina's lover, and he was bewitching the Romanovs with some kind of dark magic. During World War I, Rasputin became the focus of accusations of unpatriotic influence at the court. Alexandra was accused of being a German spy. When Rasputin expressed an interest in going to the front to bless the troops early in the war, the commander-in-chief, Grand Duke Nicholas, promised to hang him if he dared to show up. Rasputin then claimed that he had a revelation that the Russian armies would not be successful until the Tsar personally took command, and the ill-prepared Tsar Nicholas proceeded to take personal command of the Russian army. While Tsar Nicholas was away at the front, Rasputin's influence over Tsarina Alexandra increased, and he soon became her personal advisor. Prince Felix Yusupov, Alexandra's cousin, concluded the only Rasputin's death would end his control over the Romanovs and restore the legitimacy of the Russian monarchy, which was being destroyed by Rasputin's actions. Conspiring with other prominent monarchists, including the Tsar's cousin, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, and Vladimir Purishkevich, a deputy in the Duma, Yusupov set out to kill Rasputin and save the Russian monarchy from collapse. On December 30, 1916, Rasputin agreed to meet Yusupov for pastries and wine at the Yusupov estate. To justify eating in the cellar, his hidden co-conspirators had played records in a closed-off room on the main floor to convince Rasputin that Yusupov's wife was hosting a small party. The ruse worked, and the two went down to a furnished cellar to eat, drink, and talk politics. Yusupov offered Rasputin pastries, and soon Rasputin began gorging himself on cakes that had been laced with cyanide. When Rasputin did not die from cyanide poisoning, which typically kills almost instantly, Yusupov offered Rasputin a glass of Madeira, pouring some into several wine glasses that had also been laced with cyanide. One of Yusupov's co-conspirators, a doctor, had prepared each dose of cyanide very carefully to ensure that every one was strong enough to kill not just one, but several men. Well, Rasputin at first declined the wine, but his gluttony for wine quickly won out, and he drank several glasses of wine from several poisoned glasses. Yusupov began to panic as Rasputin appeared to consume enough cyanide to kill scores of men. And after a long while, though, Rasputin started having some difficulty swallowing his wine. Yusupov feigned concern and asked Rasputin if he was feeling ill. "Yes, my head is heavy, and I have a burning sensation in my stomach," Rasputin replied, adding that more wine could be an adequate cure. Using a noise upstairs as an opportunity to excuse himself, Yusupov left the cellar to confer with his co-conspirators, who were shocked that Rasputin was not killed by the poison. They offered to go down as a group in order to overpower and strangle Rasputin to death, but Yusupov decided to return alone and shoot Rasputin with a revolver instead. Upon returning, Yusupov found Rasputin slumped in his chair and struggling to breathe. But he soon recovered and became more energetic. Fearing that the poison had failed, Yusupov stood up and paced the room, trying to work up the nerve to shoot Rasputin. Rasputin stood up as well and appeared to admire the furnishings that Yusupov had bought down into the cellar. Seeing Yusupov share a crystal crucifix on the wall, Rasputin commented on the cross, then turned away to look at an ornate cabinet on the other side of the room. "You'd far better look at that crucifix and say a prayer," Yusupov muttered. Rasputin turned to Yusupov for several tense moments of silence. In his memoirs, Felix Yusupov wrote, "I realized that the hour had come. Oh Lord, I prayed, give me the strength to finish it." Yusupov then pulled out a revolver, firing one shot, hitting Rasputin in the chest. Rasputin cried out and collapsed onto the floor, where he'd laid in a growing pool of blood, but did not move. Alerted by the gunshot, Yusupov's co-conspirators rushed downstairs. The doctor checked for Yusupov's pulse and found none, confirming that Rasputin was dead, shot close enough to his heart to be immediately fatal. Before long, however, Yusupov started feeling uneasy. He excused himself and went back down into the basement to check on Rasputin's body. It laid motionless exactly where he had left it. He shook the body and didn't see signs of life at first. Then Rasputin's eyelids started to twitch. Then they opened. "I then saw both eyes," Yusupov wrote, "the green eyes of a viper, staring at me with an expression of diabolical hatred." Rasputin lunged at Yusupov, staring, snarling like an animal and digging his fingers into his neck. Yusupov was able to fight Rasputin off and push him away. He ran up the stairs to the first floor, yelling up to Perishkovich, to whom he had earlier given the revolver. "Quick, quick, come down, he's still alive." Looking down the steps, they saw Rasputin clawing his way up the stairs on his hands and his knees, heading towards the side door leading out into the courtyard. He shoved the door open and ran out into the courtyard. Terrified of what would happen if Rasputin got away and returned to the Tsarina, the two men gave chase. Pereshkovich was the first out the door, and he immediately fired 2 shots. He missed, but then chased down the wounded Rasputin, and from just feet away fired 2 more shots. One of the shots struck Rasputin in the head, and Rasputin collapsed to the ground. Yusupov pulled out a rubber truncheon and started beating him with it. Pereshkovich pulled him off the body. Rasputin wheezed and looked at his attackers through one eye. Yusupov had 2 loyal servants wrap Rasputin's body in heavy carpets and tied with heavy chains. They took the body to a bridge over the Neva River and dumped it into an unfrozen patch of water below. Later that week, Rasputin's corpse was pulled from under the ice of the frozen Neva River. The police found a patch of ice with claw marks on the bottom side. An autopsy on the mad monk revealed that he had survived the poisoning. He had survived the gunshot to the chest and the one to the head. And he had survived the beating. Cause of death? Drowning. 4 months later, the Romanovs found themselves in a similar place. The people of Russia rose up against the monarchy and Nicholas abdicated the throne. By October of 1917, the Bolsheviks had control of the government. They took the family by train to Yekaterinburg and put them up in a house. One evening, they went down into the basement, purportedly to take a family photograph. And the Romanovs were never heard from again. Bummer about the Romanovs, but how about that Rasputin? Hey, thanks for coming by. I hope you had fun. The Mad Monk. Who knew? I hope you had fun. I sure did. I want to thank my producer, Casey Moulton, and Avery for running the teleprompter, and Mr. Brent Allen for letting us use the studio here on the campus of Columbia High School. I had fun, but I won't quit my day job. And I certainly encourage you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you've just seen. Check out some of my other videos. And next time somebody tries to poison and shoot and beat you with a truncheon and throw you in a river, remember me. I'm Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher. And I've gone rogue.